One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Daily Press sports reporter and columnist David Teel is back on One Question today. David stopped by a handful of times in the last year plus to discuss a variety of topics. Today, it's an update on the athletic director search at William & Mary to replace Terry Driscoll, who is retiring after a long stint of leading the Tribe. As an important side note here, David was just inducted to the U.S. Basketball Writers Association Hall of Fame, which he totally tries to downplay, but is an amazing accomplishment. David does really solid work and has for a long time for the Daily Press. So enjoy today's One Question, and there's some good perspective in here on where William & Mary is going with their AD search here in the coming weeks and months.
Well, Matt, they have a 15-member search committee chaired by the dean of the business school, Larry Pulley, who is in his second go-around with an athletic director search. He chaired the group that recommended Terry Driscoll back in 1995. And having spent some time talking with Larry last month, I know they'd really like to get cranking here in the new year. And Terry Driscoll will retire at the end of the fiscal year in June. And they'd like to have someone on board before that just to have some overlap with Terry to ease the transition.
And is your sense that the focus on the skill set could still very much be fundraising oriented, being able to drive new giving or enhanced giving for the department?
It's absolutely the priority for the search committee. I mean, Larry made, he didn't try to hide that in the least. The college at large recently launched $1 billion fundraising campaign. It's called For the Bold, which I think is a pretty apt name given the amount they're trying to raise, especially from a limited donor base, because William & Mary is such a small, although public institution, and the athletic department needs funds as much as anyone. And they've recently gotten some big time gifts, but they need more. And it's interesting. Pulley told me that they are not in a position where they can train someone to be an athletic director, which is ironic because that's precisely what they did with Terry Driscoll. He was an out-of-the-box hire, had not worked in athletics administration prior to his arrival in Williamsburg.
Does James Madison's FCS Championship change maybe the sense of urgency in raising this money and getting, the football program improved and in a greater visibility standing? Or I know those two aren't necessarily exact institutional peers, but they've certainly been aligned for a long time from an athletic standpoint. So does the Dukes winning the national championship change anything about this search for William & Mary?
Well, Colonial Athletic Association football, Matt, has always been nationally prominent. And William & Mary has been among the programs that have done very well. The Dukes the Tribe has never won a national championship, but twice has reached the semifinals. Jimmy Laycock is an institution, the longest tenured head coach in Division I. And he's done very well at his alma mater, and I think he'll continue to do well. They have upgraded. They just debuted this season, a new stadium upgrade. They've got a terrific support facility. So I don't know that the JMU's national title just in of itself fuels that urgency, but just knowing how competitive CAA football is. I mean, heck, if Richmond's quarterback, Kyle Lauletta, doesn't get hurt late in the regular season, we could be sitting here talking about the Spiders having won a second national championship.
Yeah, you're right. Well, and your comment about them not wanting to train someone to understand how to be an effective athletic director, that would certainly tend us to lean towards, okay, well, then it's a sitting AD. But this combination of a premier fundraiser who's also a sitting AD, but could have the trajectory or interest in a place like William & Mary, that would narrow the candidate pool, I would think, to a certain degree. Wouldn't you agree?
I think it would, and that's why I think they're going to be willing to look at associate ADs and maybe someone who's in a development role right now. So I don't think it necessarily has to be someone with the big chair experience. But I will tell you, I think it is critical to them that it's someone with experience at a school such as William & Mary. Not necessarily William & Mary, but certainly a like-minded institution where you're trying to do more with less and you have very exacting academic standards.
See, and these are the little, sometimes I call them dots on a whiteboard, but these are the little dots on a whiteboard that you start connecting. And nothing that you've said so far is out of the realm of reality of what you would think about maybe who they'd be going after. But and you mentioned that they might not want to train somebody to be an AD, which would make you think, okay, a sitting AD, but now you're saying maybe it could be a senior associate, executive associate, somebody who's raised money, maybe at a larger school, but with an academic profile and a budget profile within their peer group that's similar to William & Mary. And so you can start kind of, in my mind, I'm already starting to work through, okay, who's at what school, who fits that criteria.
Sure.
And, you could come up with 10 people probably pretty quickly. But timeline-wise, if they're really going to get rolling here in the next couple of months, next month or so, and they want to have somebody in place before Terry leaves, could we see a hire maybe by the end of March, the beginning of March? Got any expectations there?
Yeah, I think by April, I think they're going to have an athletic director. I think we'll have the press conference. And then the new person gives notice at his or her current position. Then maybe gets to Williamsburg 1st of May and spends some time in the transition.
What kind of place is Williamsburg from a community and style of life standpoint?
Oh, I think it's depending on who it might be, I think it can be very got people from come there as tourists to view the history of the place, and there's a theme park there, and there's golf courses. Jimmy Laycock has no shortage of tracks to pick from when he gets the itch to go hit them. So no, it's a small community. There, if you're raising a family, there's terrific schools there. You can walk through the historic area and find great food, and there's entertainment not far away, and you're not all that far removed from Richmond and Washington D.C. No, I think it can be a very attractive from a lifestyle standpoint.
Do you have an expectation that it may be somebody who's very familiar with the let's call it the region as well? I mean, is there a certain attitude type that would fit best?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a pretty diverse area in terms of backgrounds and such. I mean, heck, Terry Driscoll was a Boston College basketball All-American. He didn't have a Southern bone in his body when he showed up in 1995.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we hear so much about fit, and I talk so much about fit that you're always trying to think about, okay, what kind of person would fit at this institution best? Are there, from a staffing standpoint, David, is there opportunity in your understanding to add key staff if needed? Are there current openings that maybe I'm not aware of that the new AD would hire?
I don't think so. Now, maybe in the new regime, some folks might say, well, this is not for me, or I want to give the new person a chance to bring his or her own people. That's always the possibility. But they're not all of a sudden. This is not going to be Nick Saban's Alabama staff, where all of a sudden they're hiring 10 new people to coordinate recruiting or high school evaluation and such. There's not an unlimited budget, and it's a hard job up there, to get all the money that you need. And they've put together a very ambitious plan. They'd like to build a new pool for the swimming team. I mean, I think one of the great success stories, and I think it's very illustrative of the challenges at William and Mary, Matt, is its swimming and diving team is a perennial CAA champion, but they don't have any divers. They never get any diving points because they don't have a diving well in the on-campus pool, which, oh, by the way, they share with the general student body. It's just the swimmers who are earning enough points at the CAA championships to win the title.
I don't think I've ever talked about swimming in one question, so I know I can always count on you to dig deep. And that's actually really fascinating. And my next question was kind of going to be along those same lines, which is the head coaching portfolio for William and Mary right now. Are there any, in your view or from your understanding, that are performing at a level that maybe that the institution isn't satisfied with? Are there potential head coaching moves that could be made? And that's sort of speculatory, I know, which I try to stay away from. But it is a piece of the overall criteria that aspiring administrators would look at.
I think it absolutely is. But here's the comparison I would make there, Matt. When Whit Babcock took the job at Virginia Tech, he knew that he was going to be replacing Frank Beamer, because Frank Beamer, sooner rather than later, because of his age, was going to be retiring. Well, it's the same thing at William and Mary. And Laycock and Beamer are friends and worked together back in the day for Bobby Ross at the Citadel, so I think the comparison is even better. But Jimmy, even if he goes another 4 or 5 years, which would be a remarkable run, I mean, the new AD is likely going to have to hire a new football coach, and one who is an institution at his alma mater. So I think that's probably the piece of the puzzle that any prospective AD would look at and say to himself, okay, this is probably going to be my biggest challenge in the first part of my tenure.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about, from your viewpoint, what's the ceiling for William & Mary football? What's the ceiling maybe for the two hoops programs? And what's the ceiling for the athletic department as a whole? And let's make some comparisons to where some current schools are in those programs and overall that would be aspiring peers for William & Mary.
William and Mary football has national aspirations and always has. It's disappointing in that building when they don't make the playoffs, and I think that is a legitimate aim and goal. I mean, they have a history, they have quality coaching, they're in a terrific conference, and they've shown the ability to recruit that caliber of athlete. The basketball programs are a much different component because neither has ever been to the NCAA tournament. I mean, the men have come achingly close of late in CAA tournament finals, and Tony Shaver, who was trained under Dean Smith at North Carolina as a walk-on guard, and he's a superb tactician and has done great things in Williamsburg, but they just haven't been able to win that game to get them into the tournament. One of, I think, 5 original Division I members that have never made the bracket.
Right. Can you name the other 4? Can you name the other 3 other than Northwestern? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Northwestern, Army, the Citadel, and St. Francis of New York.
And by all accounts, now we're only halfway through the season, but by all accounts, probably Northwestern is going to break their streak this year, or would look like that. But that's not a group you want to be in. But you're right; they've been awful close the last couple seasons.
Yeah, they sure have, and they're scoring in bunches again this season, and they have a big time clutch guard in Daniel Dixon. But it'll all, as it always does in the CAA, it's going to come down to those 3 days of tournament this year in Charleston, South Carolina, actually for the first time.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.